For those of you who don't know me, I'm Maggie Cahill, the artistic director here at the theater, and I am so happy that we have two very special guests. You know, I don't know if you know this, but you know this guy named Paul Grondahl? He's done a few things around town. But, you know, Paul also wrote the very, very thorough biography of Erastus Corning II. And so he knows more about where the bodies are buried than I think just about anyone in Albany. Although Jack McEnany and Bill Kennedy are here, and I think they could probably, you know, both, you know, give them a run for the money. I would also like to just say that I'm always happy when she comes, and she's such a great supporter of this theater and the arts. So Kathy Sheehan, our mayor, Mayor Sheehan. And I would also like to let you know that the cast of The True is here, and they are wonderful. And so if you see them out in the lobby, you might recognize them. They're all here, sitting in the second row here, and they are all marvelous people. So, so I want to tell you a story, and then I want to introduce the guys, and then we'll get on with it. So I went to go see The True in New York when it was a big hit at Signature Theater Company. And I went by myself, and I was sitting in the balcony, and I was sitting on the end of the row in the balcony, and the woman next to me looked at me and said, "Oh, are you Maggie?" I don't know if you really want to hear that when you're alone in New York City, you know? It's like, yes. And she said, "Oh, are you scouting the show to bring to Albany?" And then she turned down the row of the balcony and said, "Hey guys, Maggie's here. She's scoping out the show." And I don't know, about 10 people in the balcony leaned forward and went, "Hey Maggie, hi, how you doing?" And then she leaned forward over the balcony down to the orchestra and said, "Hey guys, Maggie from Capital Rep is here. She's scoping out the show." And they all turned and said, "Hey Maggie, you got to bring this show to Albany." So I thought, well, I better do it or I'm going to be in big trouble. These people know me, right? So from there, I've had a lot of people who have requested us to do this play because it is about us, and it is a story particularly about Albany. I'm going to let Paul talk more about that and Char in terms of, you know, what inspired him to write this. And so let me, without further ado, introduce our host for tonight so I can get off the stage and we can get going. Paul Grondahl is the current director of the New York State Writers Institute at the University of Albany. He began his position in 2017 after 32 years as a reporter at the Times-Union. Now, I have to tell you, this guy is giving me like hope for a second career, okay, for me, all right? Really, and you know, he wrote so many really memorable stories at the TU, didn't he? It's not in his bio, but I just feel like he was always such a wonderful features writer and just could really spin a tale. He's the author of several books, and including the political biography entitled Erastus Corning II, Albany Icon, Albany Enigma. And it is packed with information about this period of history and the 42 years that Erastus was our mayor here in Albany. Now, so Paul, why don't you come out and get a big round of applause? And I am really, really happy to introduce Char White to you. I told him I thought he was pretty brave coming to Albany after writing The True, the fictionalized account of, you know, this period of time. Oh, come on out, Char. But I want to read you some of his accomplishments because he is a wonderful writer. And, you know, we're in rehearsals right now, and the actors will tell you if you run into any of them, the writing is so good. It's so wonderful and so clear and so specific for the various characters. You're in for a real treat. To listen to this play is really fabulously a treat. But I'll read the other stuff you've done now. Okay, all right.
Sorry, I blew the entrance.
You totally did, but it's okay. Char White's plays have been performed on and off Broadway, nationwide and internationally. His play, The Other Place, which, by the way, is a wonderful play, which was performed at Barrington Stage. They did a great production of that a couple summers back. It premiered off Broadway at MCC with Laurie Metcalf and was reprised on Broadway at Manhattan Theater Club with Laurie Metcalf, who then received a Tony nomination. The Snow Geese premiered on Broadway with MTC, starring Mary Louise Parker and directed by Daniel Sullivan. And Annapurna, that is one of my favorite plays, by the way. I really want to do that sometime here. Annapurna, it has a naked man in it. That's why I like it in particular. You know.
Just the behind.
Yeah, I know, but I would be directing it, so.
Okay.
You know.
Full frontal.
It's all good. It's all
whatever.
Good. Yeah. So anyway, it's a wonderful play, and it premiered off Broadway at the New Group, and it's been produced across the country, just in wonderful productions. For television, Sharr has written for Showtime's The Affair, the Starz series Sweet Bitter, created the Netflix limited series Halston with Ewan McGregor. He's another one. We'll have to talk about him. Woo. And he's the co-showrunner of the HBO Max series Generation. The True received its premiered off-Broadway with the New Group, directed by Scott Elliott, and featured Edie Falco, Michael McKean, John Pankow, and the late Peter Scolari. They were all wonderful, really, they were, right? And Sharr added it to his biography that he's thrilled Capital Rep is bringing the True to Albany. Thank you, Sharr. Thank you for being here, and take it away, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Look at this Albany crowd, Sharr.
I know it's.
Are you coming into the Lion's Den here with this play of yours?
I was a little nervous.
We're going to get into it. I mean, you know, the mayor, Bill Kennedy, Jack McEnany. No pressure.
I couldn't breathe this morning, so anyway, thanks for having me up. But it's not killing me.
It's true you've been here before, so you're wandering around the streets of Albany. What are you taking in about this place?
Oh, look, I mean, look. It's going to sound weird. I mean, it reminds me a lot of San Francisco, like pre-dot-com era when I was in San Francisco in the early 90s. I find it really beautiful. I mean, this sort of like mixture of Victorian and brutalism and, you know, all sort of stuff. I love it. I think it's great. You know. But
I want to take you back before you were Char White, you know, TV star, Broadway playwright, the True. You had a job in Manhattan. You're writing ad copy for J. Crew. You're taking a long, what is it, an hour and a half on the train?
70 minutes.
A mere 70 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're writing plays.
Yes.
Why did you think you could be a playwright, even though you were not getting plays published or produced? What made you think you could be a playwright? Because you were an actor, really, right? You were trained as an actor in California.
Early on, I was an actor, and I went to ACT in San Francisco, and I thought, I'll be an actor, and then it was a long story, but I'll try to make it short. But you know, you're a kid, you're dumb. You're like, I'm going to be an actor. I don't need to get a degree. And at that point, there was a certificate program, so I went to ACT. I graduated. I started writing for friends of mine who were acting in short plays. And I moved to New York, and I really quickly thought maybe I'm actually a writer. But I didn't have a degree. I couldn't go to a grad program for writing, and so I was a waiter, and so I waited tables in New York for 8 years, and I was self-producing these short plays wherever I could, and No, it was a long haul. I mean, at a certain point, I was turning 30 and I was still a waiter. And I was like, things have to change. It was not going well. And I put this emergency email out to all my friends saying, does anybody know anyone who can get me a job as a copywriter? Because I'd been told that you can still work with language. It's a 9 to 5. You have benefits. And I knew somebody who was running the copywriting department at J. Crew. So the miracle for me, Carrie Niles, I still tell her, like, she changed my life. She hired me. I was like making up colors, and
Are you wearing J. Crew tonight? You're a well-dressed man, Char White. You are.
The shoes, the J. Crew, proudly, very proudly. No, and so I began this. It's a tough struggle for artists in that you want to be the thing that you are, and yet the thing that you are doesn't pay you, and so it doesn't, and really not even for working playwrights. I mean, that's a whole different discussion, but at a certain point, I did come into the idea that you can have a good life and be multiple things. I mean, I suddenly started having a copywriting career in advertising. I went from J. Crew to Coach to Ralph Lauren to Ann Taylor, and at the same time, I was getting up at 5 in the morning and I was writing before I caught my train, and then I was napping on the train and writing and working, and then it was just so, and I knew that I just wanted to be for me, the playwrights were my heroes, and so I only had room in my life for really one play a year, and so I had to really choose carefully, and at a certain point things just kind of started happening. I finally had a production when I was 36 at the Actors Theatre of Louisville, and I thought, well, now I can't stop, like I have to keep going. And things started rolling. I got a couple of commissions, and then I finally wrote this play, The Other Place, and that really was that made the big difference, and that was my first New York production, which was off-Broadway and with Laurie Metcalf, and but still I was because you guys, I just want to let you know, an off-Broadway play, I'm going to be really clear here.
Right.
The standard off-Broadway contract is $5,000 for the run of show. Wow. That's what you get.
Wow.
You work for 2 years, 3 years, you develop this thing 4 years, you get $5,000.
It's about a month's rent in New York.
Yeah. So you keep your job, So I mean, there was this period where I went through 2 off-Broadway plays, I went through 2 Broadway plays, I was leaving my job at lunch, I was going to rehearsals, I was coming.
We're so glad you stuck with it, man. You are a fighter. You didn't quit.
Anyway, you didn't know the Pandora's box you were opening with that question, but that's,
We got to get to the truth, because this audience, as you know, they've got granular questions on this. How many saw it in New York? I saw it with my daughter. It's a beautiful play, and the run here is going to be so fantastic for Cap Rep. Who are the actors? What? All right, let's hear it for the cast. Yes. So you grow up in California and Colorado. You write about different subjects. Why Albany politics? I know there was a New York Times story in 2009, but so talk about that story. It's when Kirsten Gillibrand is named U.S. Senator by Governor Patterson.
I mean, of course, everybody in Albany knows who Kirsten Gillibrand is at the time. I want to say nobody else did. The New York Times ran this story saying, who is Kirsten Gillibrand? And so it wasn't just who is Kirsten Gillibrand, but they really spotlighted Polly Noonan. And I was fascinated. I was fascinated by this person, this incredible personality who, apparently wielded so much power in Albany, but was never elected, and was a woman. And there was this. I think even in that story, maybe they even grabbed it from your book. There was this story about her punching somebody in the ribs, and I was like, who is this? And then from there was, the story is that Polly Polly was instrumental in Basil Patterson's lieutenant governorship run in 1970, right? Which resulted in Governor Patterson appointing Gillibrand to Hillary Clinton's Senate seat, right? And so I was fascinated by the fact, this intergenerational back scratching, or paying tribute to someone who assisted somebody else. That the son of the father would assist the granddaughter of the grandmother who did. I mean, it was very powerful for me, and I thought, I just want to know about this. What is this? I have no idea what this is, and so I started.
So you didn't grow up in politics then. Where did you start reading about Albany politics and source material?
Albany politics, I mean, from this. I mean, I clipped the New York Times article, and then it was on my my cork board, and I started doing a lot of research. I bought your book.
Thank you. Look at this, he brought it. The first time we're meeting in person, I've only interviewed him by phone.
He's going to sign it. You're going to sign it.
Of course.
You know, Bill Kennedy's book.
Yes.
You know, of course.
Jack McEnany's book.
You'll sign that too, right?
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, look, I'm as a West Coaster and a Westerner, I'm fascinated by the East Coast, by tradition. I've always been fascinated by politics. I love the power play, and of course, like when you're looking for something about Polly Noonan, especially Polly and Mayor Corning, where do you start? I mean, their relationship, and to be clear, I'll say relationship their relationship as just two people. Began in 1938?
37, the New York State Senate, when they worked together. Yeah.
So where in that span of time, the first question for me is, where do you start?
Right.
Where do you start? Where's the beginning of this story?
I mean, I think so much it is about politics, it's about Erastus and Polly, but it's really about women in politics. You know, she never had elected office. She was always behind the scene. And from your play, this is your description of Dorothea Polly Noonan, which sort of gets to, it seems like her play. I mean, it's a character study about Albany politics, but it really is centered with Polly. The ultimate loyalist, Polly is charming, vociferous, cajoling, foul-mouthed, and pugnacious. Sexy in her youth, and always a force to be reckoned with, she is single-minded in her drive to support Erastus and his endeavors above almost anything else. How early on did you write that in the whole process of writing the play? And so you knew who she was, or which character did you start with?
Oh, no, I started with her. Okay. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I will usually write the descriptions it's usually sort of the last thing I do. But no, I definitely started with her. What really helped me was there was this documentary on Albany machine politics, and for me, I need to hear how somebody speaks. I need to hear the how of their syllables, and so to see finally, and there's very little that I think that, I don't know if that's the only taped interview of her. Yeah. But to finally hear how she spoke, I thought like, I hear this now,
I didn't add them up, but there's got to be a couple dozen F-bombs and mother F-bombs from Polly. And my experience with her for several hours interviewing for the Corning book, she did drop a lot of profanity, a lot? I got to say. You also had Erastus Corning with a lot of F-bombs. Now, I've talked to people that spent a lot of time with him. I met him a few times. I guess he could with his Maine buddies and drinking buddies. How did you decide both of them would be kind of foul-mouthed? Was it the political? And Charlie Ryan is very foul-mouthed in this play. Was it just the political milieu, or?
This is, I think the controversy here is that this is, or for anything, is that, really any fiction is that you're a behind closed doors life. And so I thought, you know, this is where the sleeves get rolled up, you know, and where I also, my understanding, you know, and largely from your book and largely from Albany is, you know, I was really fascinated by their dynamic, you know, and how my theory was, and again, it's all theory for me, is that how she may have pulled him out of his aloofness, you know, how she may have pulled him out of this distant veneer, and that this person, in my theory, probably was just fun. You know, he was able to curse and able to really open himself up in her presence. You know, I mean, it must have been a very.
It's amazing because I've talked to Howard Nolan, the only living person who's in the play. I talked with him after he saw it. I've talked to other people, Albany people who saw it. You really nailed it. That's what amazes me for somebody who didn't grow up in it. Did it help to be an outsider? The fact that you could say what you wanted, you weren't beholden to like relatives who were related, or you were a complete outsider. Nobody was going to say, hey, Char, you know, take it easy on the family or whatever.
Well, look, I mean, I think I do have to say I was reluctant to interview people because I think, you know, especially in this story, in this town, everybody's got skin in the game. And you know, whether it's personal skin or whether they're covering, like whatever it happens to be, like everybody's got a story. And I very much respect that. And yet at the same time, you know, I'm very rigid. I decided that the story really needed to start with the death of Dan O'Connell. And then it needed to start like this is the place where the surface breaks and the world is upset. So let's start here, you know, in 1977. And then of course with Howie Nolan,
right.
You know,
you picked a perfect time. I mean, it was the most pressure that the machine was under. It was the only time that the mayor had a primary in 11 terms. It's the perfect moment, and you really capture it. But, you know, we were getting whispers up here. There's this play. Has anyone heard? And I was calling around. Nobody'd heard. And it's like Char White. First call was Bill Kennedy. We heard of Char White? No, we don't know Char White.
It's like, no.
It's like, so
don't know that guy.
We poke around. Somebody sends us a little bit of intel from New York, and it was like, he kept the real names. So that was the first question. Why did you want to keep the real names? Except Bill McCormick is kind of a composite.
Yeah,
he's the only one in the cast with not a real name.
Yeah. Well, look, I definitely had flirted. I was like, look, maybe I set this in Poughkeepsie, you know? But like, no, you know, Poughkeepsie.
We're so glad you didn't.
Like
please,
it's like
please, this is Albany.
I mean, I love
the
Poughkeepsie,
capital.
but it's, you know, or you could set it here and change all the names. But then you sort of, I felt on some level that took away from the power of who they were. And also I was really excited, and I guess back to like why I didn't interview a lot of people. I was excited to pursue this theory. You know, this theory that this moment in time from February to September of '77 was this sort of window for the drama here. I wanted to pursue it through the historical record and to sort of, you know, tease out what the actual drama was and where the, you know, the idea of you know, this internecine fight within the Democratic Party was really exciting, and that's why I felt like using the real people were important, because the real drama was the drama itself, the reality of it was what was most exciting, I think.
But you were free. I mean, it's not meant to be a historical document. It's not a documentary. It's not a biography. It's not a history. It was a work of the creative imagination. I mean, there were so many where you'd start with the straight history and then you would create. You created scenes, you created this character, you created, I mean, the scene of Nolan and Polly in the car. Don't slow drive
sure
me
that
down
never
State
happened.
Street. I mean, I'm going to read a couple of my favorite lines in a minute, but just to get a flavor of the salt of this language. Quite a few hands went up who've seen it, but some of this language, you might make me blush here, Char, but I got to read some of this just to have you react and get a flavor of how you really understood, I think, everything about the culture and the language and everything here. Here's Charlie Ryan. That scene with Charlie Ryan is worth the price of admission, too. That's one of my favorite scenes.
He's like the ogre who comes out from under the bridge.
Yes.
I don't mean that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the Ryans.
Here's Charlie Ryan. We're Dan's people, even with Dan dead. You're the mayor's people. Let's be real clear. The mayor was Dan's invention, and all of Dan's people, me included, pulled the levers to make Dan's invention walk and talk. For the most part, you've been Erastus's special friend, and you wield that like a stick. Dorothea. You always call her Dorothea throughout, never Polly. Dorothea. That's what I do, Charlie. Bargain with motherfuckers. She's there to make a deal with Charlie Ryan. She's something going on in the scene with Charlie Ryan. Charlie, Dan had regrets about ever introducing you in Erastus. Dan thought you'd gone out of control, way out. Dan thought you made Erastus look bad. For years, Dan told Erastus, drop her. Drop that fucking Polly Noonan. Drop the rumors. Drop her foul fucking mouth. Drop her. You're like a fucking snake with the head cut off, still biting. Jesus, Polly. That's Char White. That's language, man. Is Charlie Ryan here in the cast? You get to speak those words, my friend. Wow. Yeah. Hold on, we're going to get to Q&A. This is going to get a little rowdy. You know, right next door is Albany Distilling, where they brew ironweed whiskey and bourbon, so this could get a little out of control, Char. But
I say to my wife, why do the kids curse so fucking much?
You could have written that children's book, Go the Fuck to Sleep. I mean, we would have been rich. But the language... How many drafts do you do? How many, and how much, I want to know how much you were involved in that production, a beautiful production with Scott Elliott and, like we said, Michael McKean as Mayor Corning and Edie Falco and the late Peter Scolari and this great cast. How much are you involved? How much are you revising the script while they're rehearsing?
You know, very involved. Very involved. For a first production, really involved. I'm there as much as I possibly can. You know, I mean, I always think that a play, especially, really on the page, it's a theory. You know, it's a theory until you get it up and it's moving around, and then what you're doing is you're proving the theory or you're disproving the theory, and sometimes you're wrong. You know, and so. This process was great. I mean, all of these actors were tremendous. They had all worked together before. They were funny as hell. They were, my brother and I, when we were boys, I told Michael McKean, I was like, we listened to grooves off of that album, Squiggy and the Squigtones. Like, it was magical, you know. So, but I think what's really important is, especially with how much language there is, to really look at, to look at the pacing, to look at the volume of syllables, where do we need to rest, where have we gone too far, and I think the cast was also really, really clear about, is this, I get these questions, is this a comma or is this a period? They're like really. But as involved as I could be, I also try to back off. I try not to micromanage, but I want to be present for where do we need some light shined in some places.
I saw a couple of interviews with Edie Falco, and she said, I guess she just had the script because she said, I didn't know it was a real person. I said, is that possible? When did you give her the memo?
She didn't want to do any research. She just thought, like, you've done it for me. It's on the page. I think it seemed like for her the what was on the page needed to be most real, right. I
got to say, I went with my daughter. It was a packed house. and it was a New York audience who are jaded, who are like, this play about Albany politics. I was a little worried. To be honest, I was like, how are they going to react? They loved it. It had an extended run. Why didn't it get transferred to Broadway? I thought it was going to make it to Broadway. What happened?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like that season there were a couple of political plays. Sometimes in a season, just like one goes and one doesn't. What the Constitution Means to Me, great play, went. We didn't. I can't. It was heartbreaking to me, especially as we were coming up on another election cycle. I thought, like, why? This is the play to do. Whereas when I wrote it, I was like, nobody's going to care about this play. I was like, because I wrote it before. I wrote it mid-election cycle. I was like, nobody's going to care about a woman in politics. There's just,
You really get into, you create this whole dynamic that you said it was behind closed doors, we don't know, but there's a very, as the mayor calls it, it's complicated, their relationship. How did you see it? They had one kiss in an elevator. She talks about it. I was drunk. They're at a political convention. They all hear the whispers that some of the Noonan children have Corning blood in them. They deal with that. And this is how you start the play. He's distancing himself. He's dropping Polly because he's kind of tired of these whispers and he feels he's vulnerable. Where did you come down on that? How did you, as a playwright in this creative world, understand their relationship?
Well, look, to be clear, I don't know what the relationship was. So I took a stance. I feel like I could have taken a much more sorted stance, but I didn't feel right about doing that. I also felt thematically, for me, what may have happened or may not have happened in a bedroom, in a way, was beside the point. For me, the title of the play, The True, is about those who are true. And I feel that, Polly is the ultimate loyalist. And I do, obviously that whatever her relationship with the mayor was, that bore out in her marriage also. They did stay together until Peter passed.
Peter's an amazing character in the play too. He's very well written and very well acted.
Who is the person in the relationship with somebody like Polly? Like, you really have to do some deep breathing exercises a lot.
Let me read this little short section that addresses this. It's Dorothea and Erastus, and Peter's in the room too. Dorothea, we're people who care about people. A machine doesn't have a heart. We have heart. Even you, Howie. It's Howard Nolan, actually. Betty's in it, though. Erastus. Peter's in it. I'm in it. It's a menage a trois. Except all of the bad parts and none of the good. Erastus. Trois means 3. There are 4 of us. Dorothea. Fine. Then it's a menage a 4, whatever the hell you want to call it. Dorothea. What bothers me most are the rumors that Peter's children aren't his children. We're coming up on Mother's Day. This is when Peter starts looking at the floor a lot, not looking me in the eyes. There's a couple really powerful scenes with Polly and things. Was it hard writing that? There's some very deeply emotional scenes that I never thought of in relation to Polly and Erastus that you've created like that.
Well, I have to tell you, I read your Polly interviews over and over and over and over. I really did. Parsing out any syllable, parsing out any turn of phrase that could shine a light on intention and you write in your Corning biography about that being a painful thing, and I just thought, yeah, of course, in this small, large city, to know that you're shadowed by these rumors all the time, and then to be the husband of that person. how must that affect you day in and day out as you go through your day at the grocery store checkout, in your office, walking down the street? You know, what's your umbrella that, you know, protects you from that constant whisper, you know?
And this friendship, even more complicated. Peter Noonan went on these drunken hunting trips to the Adirondacks every year with Erastus Corning, with some of the Noonans, not with Erastus's own son or his own family. I mean, complicated is a good word for it. But I know we have people chomping at the bit to ask questions, and I think, are you ready for this unruly Albany audience, do you think?
Sure.
So it might be easiest if you want to raise your hand. Should I bring the microphone around? Okay. Again, we're really looking forward to this run, the first April 1st through April 24th, the True, right here in this wonderful new theater of Cap Rep. One quick other question, I guess, while we're waiting. You've done a lot of TV, like I said, Generation, Halston, Sweet Bitter. Are you doing TV now? Are you working on another play? What have you got?
I've got another play in the works. It's called Pictures from Home. It's an adaptation of a book by this amazing photographer named Larry Sultan, who spent 10 years obsessively researching his parents and photographing them. So it's about them. And I've got a pilot in development at HBO Max. I'm working on a series for Apple. So it's been good. It's been a good run.
You're a long way from waiting tables, Char White.
Yeah, I am. Thank God.
Thank God. Yes.
I still do it in my sleep, though. I'll tell you.
He was standing up. He's got the first question.
Okay,
He's
here we
ready.
go.
Thank you. I'm in your play, by the way, on Sycamore Street as Charlie's assistant. I've known Charlie for 30 years, at least noontime, every day.
I'm in the hot seat now. I'm sorry.
No, you are a little bit, but it's your friend over here who used foul language on Charlie. Charlie's never that way. And he did at times, does say that has strokes, so it's a little hard for me to explain to you what I'm saying. I've never, ever, ever seen Charlie. He's very religious. He never liked the way Corning had with a girlfriend, and his kids were much against what Corning was because they were wild and active. But for me, he was the best friend I ever had in my life. I was a good friend with Polly. A very good friend at times. Other times we weren't. But I want to tell you, he was never that kind of a man when you're talking him as foul, because that is not him. And any stretch of the imagination.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm glad you had a good friend in Charlie. You realize this was a creation. This was fiction. This is going to be performed by actors who are doing make-believe. It's not meant to be Charlie's biography.
But I appreciate knowing that. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Yes. Gosh, you're going to make me work for my money here. Yeah.
Hi, I used to drive a Hedrick beer truck in this town, and if you would rewrite the play and include that character, I'd be real good in the role.
You're still in rehearsals,
No problem.
Maggie. You might have had a beer driver.
There's a question over here.
Yes, you can hear me.
You think so?
Big Joe, shout it out.
In the newspapers, they refer to Polly Noonan as his confidant. They wouldn't say mistress or girlfriend. Now, did everyone know that the word confidant meant, I see, they wouldn't say his girl, his woman he lived with. So how do people, I assumed everyone knew confidant meant that he was living with his girlfriend. That
Confidant was kind of the wink-wink term that the newspaper, the Times-Union, started using.
did everyone know that it was...
You use it in your play.
You use in the play. I don't know that. I assume that.
You know, it was a family newspaper, so I think that was a way around. Instead of Menage a Four, you know?
I asked her what her relationship is with the mayor. She says, I'm his confidant. I say, fine, everybody knows that. but everybody knows what you say to the mayor what we say to you is going to be said to the mayor. So, I mean, we do deal with the confidant thing in the play.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there were many, many examples of public displays of affection between them that I documented, that people told me about. There were a few pictures at some point. I mean, they were not entirely discreet at dances, at parties. So that's fact.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a question? Am I missing someone?
Boy, they're letting you off easy, Char. I thought I might have to sort of
Yeah, I'm going to sneak out of
over
town.
here.
bodyguard
Okay.
you out of here.
You have a question? All right.
I was fascinated by your comment that you were attracted to the character Polly Noonan because I think she was a strong woman. Is there something in your background that...
You might need a couch instead of a chair.
I know.
Your background.
Well, I mean, I've got 4 sisters and obviously a mother. So, no, look, I think for me, powerful figures are complicated. Powerful female figures are much more complicated because of what they have to shoulder and what they have to fight through, and so I feel like it takes the complication of a powerful person and pluses it time, whatever. And also if Polly Noonan were alive today, she would be holding office. And so how does someone who's described as the most powerful person in Albany not hold office? And how does that work? So that's what was most fascinating to me.
You have a question over there?
Yes. Don, do you need a mic?
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Don Arnold. I was friends with Polly from the point I was very young. I was probably about 22 or so when I met her. And I was a little reluctant to say anything because I don't know how she would have felt about different things that got said. But it's very interesting what you just said about she would have been in an office. I can assure you, she never wanted it.
She never wanted it?
Because she always said to me and made it perfectly clear, there's facades, there's operations. Well, I mean, that's the truth of the matter. Her power was not one that could have been achieved by an office. Her power was achieved by her personality, her virtues, which a lot of people forget. I mean, I learned how to swear from Polly Noonan. There's no two ways about that. And if there wasn't so many women in this audience, I would tell you a few stories, but I'm going to refrain. But in any case, Polly...
I want the stories.
Oh. All right, you asked for it. I'm telling you right now, you asked for it.
Yes,
There's a gentleman over there who said he knew Charlie Ryan, and I definitely want to speak to you. In any case, what does this mean to anybody? Ann O'Connell's hat. When I had not this hat, but another hat made, Polly was on top of the world. And when I got it, because I ordered it from Buffalo, a guy from Buffalo had it, and she, I used to drive her to events at night because she couldn't see that well at night. She always insisted on driving me when it was the daytime. So, and you were taking your life in your own hands, I can assure you, when you were doing it. I well remember, she and I met at the Hibernian Hall as working bingo, and for those of you who know the layout of Albany, you go from Quayle Street, where Hibernian Hall was, and then you take a left onto Central Avenue. Without fail, every Sunday afternoon, I would take my life in my own hands, get into the car, and watch her at that light not allow the other person oncoming to come, but rather reminded them with her middle finger who had the right of the way. And that was not just once, that was a regular occasion. Well, in any case, there was a supermarket, Trading Port, that's on that block, and I had to get some stuff there, and so she says, okay, well, I'll wait for you. My house is another block down. He says, Polly, you don't have to wait for me. She says, well, it's raining out. I said, I've got a hat. She said, you're going to ruin your hat. I said, Polly, my hat's made out of beaver. And she goes, well, I suppose what's the point in having a beaver if you can't get it wet? You asked for it, I'm telling you.
Don Arnold, everyone. And a perfect segue, another one of my favorite Char White lines from Polly Noonan. Hold on. Hold for the punchline. Erastus, we have to end our association. It's perception, Polly. Dorothea, perception like what? You don't like my filthy mouth? Well, this is the mouth I have. You want some kiss-ass now? Some prevaricator? What he wants is for people to stop thinking him and me are fucking. Is that what you're going to tell me, Mayor? Erastus and I never did that, Peter, just so you know. Peter's in the room. And the irony in all this is that if I was ever going to do that outside of this marriage, don't you think I'd have done it when my tits look good? You could have fried an egg on my tits in 1940, Peter. For all I remember, you may have tried to. That's Char White. That's the true. You better get your tickets. Are there any tickets left in the whole run, Maggie?
It will
There's many more where that comes from.
Popular play.
There's many more where that came from.
Yeah.
I don't know how you top that Don Arnold
I know.
fedora story.
Does anybody else have a question? Yes?
I was wondering if Senator Gillibrand has seen the play.
She's mentioned
I don't know.
when she's sewing culottes for Tina.
Correct.
She's mentioned.
I don't know if she's seen the play.
Oh, seen. Oh, I thought she's in the play. No, seen it. Oh, good. Sorry, I didn't
Seen
hear.
it? I don't know. I don't think she's seen it. No, there was someone who was.
I thought someone from the family might have
associated-
seen it.
Yeah. I believe some people from the family have seen it.
Did they have any reaction with you at all, or?
Well, they did tell me that it wasn't Kirsten, it was Tina within the family. So that was interesting. And then also that Polly didn't sew using a machine, she sewed by hand. But my mother sewed on a machine, and there was something about the sound of it that I loved, the way that it can punctuate. So I mean there were little details like that, but yeah.
You also get into a great theory, one of the great myths of Albany and Erastus Corning's the 1973 election with Carl Toohey. We happen to have his son Charles Toohey, who worked on the campaign, in the audience. You posit an interesting theory that Charlie went down and got the votes for this third candidate, Bittner, and threw the election that way. There's many versions that Mr. Toohey actually won the election, and what are your thoughts on that? How did you want to work with that in the play?
Now, I don't recall. Now, did I read that rumor?
He won by
Did I read that
3,500
rumor?
votes, very
Right,
close.
exactly.
Questions about some missing ballots or impounding the ballot boxes and things.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to, it seemed, well, I don't want to give too much away with the play, but I mean, then again, it's also, it's history. But it seemed really convenient. Those 3,500 votes seemed really convenient in the day. So I wanted to press on that a little bit, for sure.
And I interviewed your father. I think he was doing it out of principle. I don't think he wanted to be mayor, but he wanted to, show opposition to the machine and to try to shine some light on this closed system that was, I guess there's a question that always comes up and can be open, our mayor's here. Does the machine still exist? I hear that a lot. People ask that a lot. I can tell you that they took power in 1921, and now it's 2022, and there's never been anything but a Democrat in City Hall for 101 years. But is there still a machine?
That's so strange. Look, I can't speak to that. I mean, what I can say, what I do know is that when this play was being produced, off-Broadway, Cynthia Nixon was challenging Governor Cuomo in a primary. And I do know that there were those in the arts who would not go on record saying that they supported Cynthia Nixon because they were sure that they were going to lose their arts funding. So if that's not a machine, I don't know what is.
Very true. Yes. We did have a Republican machine for 30 plus years before the Democrats.
I mean, you know, there's, just pick a state, you know.
More questions for Char here. I'm really surprised. This is a very sedate audience. I think Dawn like knocked them all out.
Paul, here's a question up here.
Yes.
This isn't really a well-formed question, but I got drawn into watching Super Pumped on Showtime just in the last few days. So
is that any good?
Story of Uber. And there, again, I don't know a lot about the actual history with Uber, but they bring, is it Ariana Huffington?
Yeah.
In as a character, and they're saying things about her, and where they left off with the show before the next episode comes is she's on board for Uber. She's parlayed her presence at a conference into a relationship that leads to, she's on the board, and she's interested in being involved with powerful men. I don't know the real person, but there were things that were said about her and Huffington Post and being able to get $300 million selling something without giving any money to the authors of people that were writing things, and that she had a way of being able to create value out of nothing. And then she ends up on the board of Uber. And so it made me very curious, not only about Uber, but about Huffington, and where there is someone like that. I don't know if that's peculiar because she's a woman or not.
Do you mean the exercise of behind-the-scenes power? Is that what you're?
Behind-the-scenes power, and I'm just wondering how that type of person relates to Polly Noonan, and someone who likes to get in on the action and get in, you know, in this case, she gets into the boardroom, and I assume the character is going to make trouble. I assume this is based on something. This is the Uber story. It's based on a lot of these things that you see in the newspaper. So, you know, I'm just curious about Polly Noonan and whether or not she wanted, you know, we're saying, well, maybe she didn't want office, but there are people that still like to get into the scrum and duke it out with other powerful people and pull strings. And so I'm curious if that's a type of person, or it sounds like when you were writing about Polly Noonan, you were writing about her very specifically, that there may be a type of person that likes to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there definitely is. I mean, I'm definitely fascinated by behind the scenes motions for power. You know, how do, like, as is it John said, they're operators. Yeah. You know, so she was an ultimate operator, and I definitely wanted to explore the how of that operation. You know?
I also wanted to ask you, shifting gears between writing for the stage and writing for the screen, playwriting, screenwriting, are you working on them simultaneously? Is it different muscles? Does one come easier than the other to you, or similar exercises? Or?
No, you know, I haven't been actively writing. This is the first time in my life I haven't been actively writing a play, which is really weird for me. But I'm just trying to sort of figure out what else, how do I contribute? You know, so I feel like I'm going to spend some time figuring that out. But I mean, actually, happily, the most playwrights, I mean, I never met more playwrights in my life than when I started working in TV. So, I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing. My first season on The Affair, I'm in this writer's room with David Henry Hwang. All these playwrights, playwrights just work alone. I didn't go to grad school. I didn't come up with people. So to be in these rooms with all of these playwrights has been really exciting. And I think also the way television is structured these days or I think the most exciting shows are sort of shorter seasons, generally in a 3-act structure so you're sort of looking at it as a play over 10 hours, that you're structuring into 3 acts. So that's been, in a way, there's a lot that's the same, and then the difference is just you're writing energistically and thinking about pacing and all of that.
Excellent. We got a couple questions
We have a
from the
question,
cast. I
and
think.
this is from Annette, who's playing Polly. Antoinette.
Wow.
Close enough.
Thank you, Maggie. This is more of this is,
Antoinette.
first of all, a fan. No, I'd have to stand up?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. All right. Hi, Char. I'm Antoinette.
Hi, Antoinette.
And I'm playing Polly Noonan, and I did the research, but I'm not playing the actual Polly Noonan. I want everyone to know this. But I'm playing my version of Char's version of Polly Noonan. First of all, what I love about the way you wrote this play, because yes, it's based on the politics of Albany, but it's the personal politics that I absolutely fell in love with, and we're all enamored of your writing. We think it's a love letter to actors, because we get to say this language that just flows, and the scenes are so amazing. But what I love is that in this woman, I recognize myself in all the scenes between her and her husband, that struggle, I appreciate that so much. And even when Polly has, I think you mentioned this, when she's talking to Erastus in one of the scenes you quoted from, but she's like, you cared, Dan cared, Charlie cared, all these men cared. The only difference is that I've got a pair of tits. I mean, that's what she says in the play, but it is that whole thing of like, this woman is vilified for doing the exact same thing the men are doing in her place of business. It happens to be Albany politics, but it's her place of business, and she gets vilified for it. And I could identify with that as a 54-year-old woman in my life of many different jobs I've had. And it just rings true, which is so amazing, because your title, and Maggie talked about this so much, how the true means so many different things. And that's what I really appreciate. I know we're here about Albany, and I'm all for Albany, believe me. But the personal politics is what is grabbing me as we are rehearsing and exploring the play. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Only thing I'm going to say is, because I know we have to go soon, right?
We got a couple minutes.
Okay,
if you
good.
wanna.
Well, the mayor of Albany is sitting right.
Yes. Are we putting her on the hot seat?
Well, I don't want to put her on the hot seat, but I have asked some politicians who are in Albany, I have asked about if there's still a machine. I have asked what it did to get rid of the machine. And I've been told that we really don't have the same kind of machine that we had there. Is that your experience, Mayor? Yeah.
She would say that.
She's not.
Good answer.
I think you're right. One, people are not as gullible and easily led. In my book, I go into a great dissertation by Bill Rowley, a late, great University at Albany professor, started the journalism program. He coined patroon psychology, that this was always a company town, and the company was the government, and people were easily led, especially when the mayor and Dan, controlled hundreds and thousands of jobs, spread it around. So everyone was co-opted and part of it, and people were afraid to call it out, but now people, I think, are too independent. I think it would be hard to get the Common Council to agree on a dinner order, wouldn't it, Mayor? Just kidding.
I knew
Just
we'd
kidding.
get her to talk. I knew we'd get her.
Here we go.
I knew it.
So as the person who has to sit in this storied office and follow a mayor who really created history and was legendary, I think that one of the things that strikes me is that the Democratic machine existed at a time that we did not have a social safety net in this country. And Democrats fought for that social safety net. Democrats fought for civil service exams so that people would have security in their jobs and they wouldn't have to sign a petition or elect a certain person in order to keep their jobs, right? We created a safety net that fed people when they fell on hard times, that provided housing to people, that had rules and structures associated with it that I think eliminated a lot of that. And there are some Democrats who, look back and say, why did we do that, right? We had all of this control and power and we were able to give jobs to our friends and our loyalists and those who were true, and yet we now, they don't need us to do that. And I think breaking up with that has its pains. And there are still people trying to figure out what that means, because you do still need people who are true. You do still need people who are going to help good people get elected, but not because they think they're going to get a job or they're going to get, a handout or a $5 or $10 or, people keep telling me how much I have to pay them for the votes, and I've never paid anybody for a vote, but inflation, there are people walking down the street, give me $20, Mayor, and I'll vote for you. But, so I do think that there is in this government town, right? Those that wax, about reminiscing, right, about the way that they were helped, and they were, and we live in a very different time. And so I think the reason we still elect Democrats in this town is because Democrats fight for working families. And so, that's my political spiel, but it's not because we have a machine.
But a historical fact, are you the 74th, 250, 60 years, you were the first woman elected in this fair city. The first.
But I think you're right. Ultimately that is what this play is about. Is that everything is personal. That Mary McCormick, who lives down the block, whose husband is killed in a construction accident, who doesn't have a pension, who doesn't know what she's going to do. She's going to go to her ward leader, and her ward leader is going to go to Dan O'Connell, who's going to figure something out for her, and that is caring. And there wasn't that social safety net. And when you generationalize that, and her son and then her grandson, is grandfathered into this same patronage job, then it becomes corruption. But I do feel that in those early years, there was this sense of somebody's got to help these people.
Also, it's so universal because, as you said, he can really put words on the page. It's a beautifully written. It's about Albany politics, but it's personal. And to see that New York audience, that jaded New York audience, give it a standing ovation, and to want more, to extend it a couple more weeks, that told me all I needed to know. You really hit universal, you hit the universal themes in it.
Thank you, Paul.
I have a play development question for you. Was there any time during the initial run of this play, or perhaps immediately after the run closed, before the play actually got published, that someone who had some sort of inside knowledge, you've talked about how you didn't really do interviews, you just had research, that you changed something in the play according to something that you learned during the run or right after the run?
Good question. A little bit. I did change Kirsten to Tina. Was there anything else?
I corrected your pronunciation on Beitner. I heard earlier it was Bittner.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you corrected that for me. Appreciate that.
There were a couple others, maybe.
Very little. There's normally there will definitely be there will be things. This was a very easy first production. I was really shocked. It was usually there's a lot of struggle in a first production, and ultimately you're making script changes that you're not sure you're happy with. And so after a first production, once you're getting published, you have the opportunity to go back and address what you regret. Do you know? And I was really happy that ultimately with this play there was very little I regretted between the end of the run and the publication draft.
Great. I got to ask this. I thought you would ask, Maggie, what was it like working with Ewan McGregor? This guy's
Thank
amazing.
you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
That was a plant. This guy's a handsome man, isn't he? I mean,
I'll tell you, this guy, he was the loveliest. He was so lovely. We would go into these pitch meetings, and he would show up, and he'd just gotten off his motorcycle, and he'd come in, and we'd be like pitching these executives. There'd be this giant poster of Halston, and then right next to it there'd be a giant poster of Ewan smoking the cigarette in the same outfit. I'd say, I love this show. I want to do it so much, and it's just everything that's on my list and to do, and they would pass on it. I was like, how do you? We're sitting here with the most charming, loveliest guy on earth, and they pass? I was like, how do you? He was just incredibly humble and lovely. Yeah.
I knew he would be.
that's for Maggie. Anyone else? Last, going once, going twice. Yeah, yes. Do you need a microphone?
I think I can yell.
Yell it out.
The mayor's been, Polly Noonan's been described as an operator, and facade has been mentioned, and Dan O'Connell being the puppeteer. If Erastus Corning were to be the emperor with no clothes, or would he stand on his own, what would he be like as a person standing on his own, as a politician?
What would Erastus Corning be standing on his own as a politician? Do you want to?
I know somebody here is better equipped to answer.
I actually think you captured him. He was aloof. I think he never was interested in politics. His dad died when he was still a young man. Erastus, or rather Dan O'Connell, kind of became his surrogate father. He was never interested in politics at Yale. He was kind of brought into the machine. And going through all his boxes of papers, he was much more interested in, did salmon ever spawn up the Hudson? He kept a book. He was a polymath, his grandson told me. He was interested in many things. He would go play golf, he'd play hooky, he'd go duck hunting. He'd fish illegally in the Alcove Reservoir where he couldn't fish, where he had a little boat with a motor and everything. But he kept a detailed kind of a little notebook on mile markers driving to and from on the Mass Turnpike of fringed gentian, a rare wildflower. It's like, I saw it at 181.2 last year, and this year I saw it at 181.4. And this was the kind of person he was. He did the job as mayor with, no offense, Kathy, with one hand tied behind his back and his eyes closed. After 42 years, he really,
Also, he's been described as nothing much accomplished in his 42 years.
Well, he managed to keep the machine in place, and he managed to stay in office.
He was beholden to Dan O'Connell. That's the whole point of the play. It's a vacuum, and Dan dies, and Charlie Ryan and the Howard Nolan wing want to take that power, and it's true too. You have him. He needed a hip. His hip was bad. He had a hip replacement later that year. He's old. He's got emphysema. He's a heavy smoker. I mean, this was the moment when the pressure was coming, and he calls himself an old man with a limp in the play. But I think he was always beholden to Dan up till 5 years of his life, and then it was really too late for him to change the course of the city.
Did Polly usher in his replacement?
He fought off the Ryans, and the Ryans were kind of out of the picture after Dan died, and he was the head of the party. And then, I mean, we can talk about who came next. Tom Whalen, first time competitive bidding in the city, a lot of reforms, and it kind of continues to this day, I think, yeah. But one more question maybe, right there.
Thank you. I grew up with Brian and Peter, Polly's sons, and Penny Rutnick and Doug and those people. And Polly was a friend of my mother's, and we were, I think, in the complex, either there or the Hibernian Hall one time. There's about a half a dozen of us, and it was going around, and she was in a feisty mood, and she said to, I think there was about 4 of us, and she said, I want to tell you, I was never unfaithful to my husband, and it's all bullshit. It's good copy, but it's bullshit.
Thank you.